Florida election workers counting ballots through the night, one by one, to find out who will be the next president. This morning, new numbers, but they could keep changing for days or longer.
Problems in Palm Beach.
We've come to believe that there are serious and substantial irregularities.
Democrats are now backing a legal fight against a ballot that some found confusing.
Plus, the war of words.
The Democrats who are politicizing and distorting these events risk doing so at the expense of our democracy.
An election still in limbo.
It is 7 a.m. on the East Coast, 4 a.m. on the West Coast, and this is Friday, November 10th.
From the CNN Center in Atlanta, this is Early Edition.
Good morning, I'm Carol Lynn.
I'm Stephen Frazier. Leon Harris is on assignment in Florida. We'd like to welcome our viewers in the United States and our international viewers.
And I want to welcome you to Early Edition in the mornings.
Thank you.
All right, Stephen, well, we begin in Florida where the recount is over. Less than 2 hours ago, we got the final unofficial tally. Associated Press reports George W. Bush leads Al Gore by 327 votes in Florida, with all counties reporting. However, this count has not been officially certified since state officials haven't received all county reports yet. But remember this, we are still days away from final results. That's because overseas ballots have not been counted yet in Florida. Meanwhile, a ballot protest is going on in Palm Beach County. Lawsuits have been filed, and there are calls for a revote due to problems with some voters. They found their ballots on Tuesday. Tomorrow, county officials plan to recount the votes by machine and by hand. With the first Florida recount numbers in, the Bush campaign says his victory is confirmed. Bush aides are now calling for the Gore campaign to reconsider the ideas of lawsuits and more recounts. The Gore campaign says it has no intention of conceding now. Gore aides tell CNN the county recount is just the beginning of a process which includes tabulation of the ballots overseas.
Ground zero for the Florida recount is the Secretary of State's office in Tallahassee, and that's where county vote totals are being processed.
That's right, and CNN's Bill Hemmer is there. Bill, have they received yet any of these overseas ballots? Do they know how many there are so far?
Well, good morning to you, Carol and Stephen. In short, the answer to your question, Carol, is no. It is unclear right now, indeed, how many of those overseas absentee ballots have been received and how many more possibly can come in between now and next week. You mentioned a deadline. There is a deadline on that. It comes on November 17th, which is indeed next Friday, a week from today. Having said that, the only measure we can use right now is looking back to the past election of 1996. In Florida, it's believed that 2,300 overseas ballots did come in after the election, and about 54% of those did favor the Republican candidate for president, Bob Dole. Of course, his bid for the White House was unsuccessful. But in short, again, we don't know the total on these absentee ballots. And really, to say the last few days here in Florida have been bizarre would be a bit of an understatement. It appeared yesterday that the story changed just about every 30 minutes. It has slowed down slightly just because the Associated Press has given their figures. And again, as you mentioned, the Texas governor still with that lead, that slim margin of 327 votes over the vice president, Al Gore. I mentioned the bizarre. I want to bring in CNN's Mike Betcher on this topic, as we were talking yesterday about so many different variables thrown in here right now. Based on what you know thus far today, you've been talking with the Democrats. What are they saying?
Well, they're saying they asked for the hand count in various counties because they felt that by looking at the vote totals, there were indications that the machine might not have counted all of the presidential votes. So they believe the only way to find out for sure is to have people go through by hand and physically count each ballot. They also said that there was a meeting yesterday between Secretary of State Warren Christopher and former Secretary of State and former Secretary of State James Baker. I talked to Mr. Christopher this morning, and he said all the right things were said. Another Democrat official told me that it was just a matter to open up lines of communication, and it was very cordial. So they're opening up those lines, but I'm not sure exactly what's being said.
As viewers wake up this morning, we went to bed late last night, not knowing again what all counties would report. And what we can tell people right now is, as we look at this story as a whole, there are two deadlines we're waiting on. Number one, Tuesday the 14th, when the state says it'll have official results from here in Florida. And then, as I mentioned, the 17th, next Friday.
Absolutely. Next Friday is the deadline for the state certification. And one thing to point out to you, we're talking about these overseas ballots where the focus of attention will really shift now. Some of those were received before or on Election Day. Now, those have already been counted. Others that arrive after Election Day will go directly to the counties. They don't come here to the state capitol in Tallahassee. Each county will count those overseas ballots, and they'll do it each day as they come in. We don't know if we'll get a posting each day, but it's going to be a process, Bill, that's not going to end until Friday.
Indeed. It took me a long time to figure it out this morning, and we are still working on it. Mike Betcher, many thanks to you. Also here in the state of Florida, in the southeastern section of Florida, in Palm Beach County, it is again a point of major contention for a number of voters down there. Let's go live now to West Palm Beach and CNN's John Zarella for more from that part of the state. John, good morning to you.
Morning, Bill. I know you gentlemen were just talking about a couple of deadlines looming out there into the 17th. Well, there's some soft deadlines out there that could still throw a monkey wrench into everything. Take a look at the Palm Beach Post this morning. Judge freezes ballots until next week. The tension builds. About 8:30 last evening, a Palm Beach County Circuit Court judge, Kathleen Kroll, issued a temporary injunction which stops Palm Beach County from certifying the votes until at least next Tuesday, when she has scheduled a hearing. This is the result of a lawsuit filed yesterday by two Boca Raton women who are claiming that they were, quote, cheated of their rights. Now, we've heard that before all day yesterday, but this appears to be the first action where a judge has actually now decided to go ahead and hold a scheduled hearing, a circuit court judge, and that will be sometime next Tuesday. There are at least 4 or 5 other lawsuits we understand that are pending out there at this point, but no dates, court dates, have been set for those. The judge, in issuing the temporary injunction, said, quote, it would cause irreparable injury if Palm Beach County were allowed to certify those votes here in the county before a hearing were held. Now, the attorney representing the two women says the judge did the right thing.
I don't think the results should be certified. I don't think that the entire election should be resolved without the basis of this ballot, which was inappropriate, being resolved.
Now, while all this will take place next week, the county yesterday, late yesterday afternoon, announced that it would go ahead and do what both the Democratic and Republican parties asked for. The Democrats asked for a hand recount of the ballots here in Palm Beach County, and that will be 1% of the ballot. About 4,600 ballots will be hand counted beginning at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. At the same time, the Republican Party asked for a machine recount of all of the ballots cast in Palm Beach County. That, too, will be conducted sometime starting tomorrow about 9 a.m. Bill?
All right, John. John Zarella live in Palm Beach, and want to let you know also a couple of really interesting guests straight ahead here on CNN's Early Edition. Bob Dole will be with us live from Washington. Warren Christopher is here in Tallahassee. We'll talk with him. And also David Cardwell. He's the former director of the Elections Division in Florida. He'll be our guest certainly to try and get some answers to the many, many questions out there again now on this third day in the Sunshine State. That's it from here. See you in a couple minutes. Back to Atlanta now. More with Carol and Stephen.
All right. Thanks, Bill, very much.
Thanks, Bill. Let's turn now to the camps of the two major players in this election drama. Governor Bush is in Austin. Vice President Gore has moved, though, to Washington now. We're going to start with the Gore camp. CNN's Jonathan Karl is in the nation's capital this morning with the Gore side of all of this. Jonathan, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Immediate response from the Gore campaign to this unofficial tally of the Associated Press giving a narrow lead to George W. Bush of 327 votes. The Gore campaign saying, hey, this is the beginning of the process. They think that margin is much narrower than it was when we got started here on Wednesday. We got started with a margin of nearly 2,000 votes for George W. Bush. We're down to 327. They say that raises the stake for the next 2 steps. The next 2 steps being counting the rest of those overseas absentee ballots and going through some very important recounts by hand. The Gore campaign has requested recounts in 4 counties. Some of those recounts, the idea being here, there you're seeing pictures of the Vice President arriving in Washington last night. The Vice President is here in Washington now. He is expected to keep a very low profile until this process shakes out. We are told not to expect any public comments from the vice president. But again, his team is saying that these next steps are very important, waiting for those overseas ballots. And the recounts by hand are important because in several of these counties, there were a large number of votes that had no recorded vote for president. So what the Gore campaign wants to see happen is to go through and look at those ballots by hand, not simply run them through a machine, because they believe the machines may have missed a vote. You know, perhaps the person didn't punch the hole far enough. The machines may have missed a vote that could be picked up by hand. Meanwhile, the Gore campaign, looking at this narrow margin of 300 votes, certainly in no mood for a concession here. I asked one of the vice president's top aides if when this thing shakes out, we finally count the overseas ballots, when we finally look at these recounts by hand, will the vice president go on with legal challenges, or do you think he will have to look at this and say, hey, you know, it's time to concede? And the person looked at me, this top aide looked at me and said, concede? Concede? We won. Why would we concede? That's very much the attitude right here in Washington with the Gore campaign.
Jonathan, that attitude notwithstanding, as the move was made yesterday, I was reading some accounts of tearful Gore staffers packing up their offices in Nashville, putting things into boxes, and a kind of an elegiac or sad mood. Were you witness to any of that when you were there yesterday?
Well, absolutely. These are people who have come through, as they have over in the Bush campaign, you know, one of the toughest political battles in memory. The Nashville office is essentially closed down now without any conclusion. The Gore campaign, the Gore operation now moving up to Washington. All the top lieutenants and many of the ground troops down to Florida. Those left in Nashville are left closing up a campaign headquarters, not knowing if their guy won. It's an incredibly emotional time for them. Their nerves are frayed. They've been going for so long without sleep. There's such an emotional high, emotional lows. On election night, when at one point it looked like they were going to win, then it looked like they lost. It's a very confusing time, especially for a lot of these you know, campaign workers who've dedicated much of their lives for the past year or maybe even more to the Gore campaign, many of them working without pay, working incredibly long hours, and now being forced to go home not knowing what's going to happen next.
Well, thank you for that account of the human side of things. We tend to forget all that. Jonathan Karl with the Vice President in Washington this morning.
So you wonder what's going on over at the Bush campaign as they wait for these votes to be counted. Let's go to Jean Meserve. She is standing by in the Texas capital of Austin. Jean, what's the mood there?
Carol, you may recall that Wednesday, Governor Bush said that if the Florida recount reconfirmed his win, then he had won the election. Today, the Bush campaign going not quite that far. They did issue a statement immediately after the recount results were revealed by the Associated Press. A statement from Communications Director Karen Hughes said, "We won Florida Tuesday night, and now a recount has reconfirmed Bush's victory." She went on to say, "We hope Vice President Gore and his campaign will reconsider their threats of lawsuits and still more recounts, which could undermine the constitutional process of selecting a president and has no foreseeable end." That a reference to questions about some other states that arose yesterday, a day of increasing tensions and acrimony between the campaigns.
The governor acted positively presidential, continuing plans for a possible White House transition with Dick Cheney, making no public remarks about the muck and mire surrounding the contested presidential race. Top aides, however, waded right in.
The Democrats, who are politicizing and distorting these events, risk doing so at the expense of our democracy. One of the options that they seem to be looking at is new elections. Our democratic process calls for a vote on Election Day. It does not call for us to continue voting until someone likes the outcome.
Bush officials say the Gore campaign has exaggerated reports of voting irregularities in Florida. In Palm Beach, they say thousands of presidential ballots were also disqualified in 1996 for double punching. Reform and independent registration has surged 110% in that county, explaining, the Bush people say, the high Buchanan tally there. As for Palm Beach's butterfly ballot, the Bush people said Gore Chairman Daley should be the last to criticize it.
I have here the copy of the Cook County, Illinois judicial ballot, which is a butterfly ballot. This has been used in a number of states, in a number of counties, and it's historically been used in Cook County, Illinois. Maybe Mr. Daley's in a better place to decry democracy and confusion in Cook County than he is in Florida.
Cook County, of course, is Daley's home turf. The Bush campaign raised the specter that incomplete and irregular voting elsewhere in the country could change vote tallies and could lead to other recounts.